information to them? Okay, we are here. Today is February the 7th. We're here pursuant to subpoena and agreement of counsel. Very kindly, appreciate it, sir. I try and work out matters with as much legal courtesy as is possible whenever we can. We're here for this deposition. The parties here present are here pursuant also to notice. Is there any objection to the presentation of this deposition at this time? On behalf of you, Mr. Lambert?
Yes, I do have a few objections.
All
First
right.
of all, I did not receive a notice of deposition. I received a facsimile copy of a subpoena. I object to the notice. I'm not here by agreement because I wasn't contacted about the date. I object to the manner of service. I would also ask, is that recording?
Yes, this is a videotape also.
And I object to that because I wasn't given any notice of videotape recording. Are there any other audio or video recordings?
There may be some audio of the show. Excerpts of that will be...
No, I'm sorry. Are you recording the deposition in any other manner?
No, I'm not.
Okay. And those are my objections to the record, but other than that, I'm ready to go forward.
Understood. Okay, I will point out, though, that we gave you the notice with regard to this originally when the notice was served, and then we re-served the subpoena as we changed the date of deposition with our discussions with Mr. Rouse. We also had separate discussions about this deposition with notice and discussions with you and your associate, Mr. Russ, for the record. Okay.
For the record, I'm Alan Rouse, attorney representing the deponent today, Betty Sue Foyer. I have also an objection to the videotape nature of the deposition in the absence of appropriate notice thereof. Also, by way of ground rule, Ms. Foyer is not a party, and we haven't been involved in these depositions before. I understand, Mr. Watson, that both Mr. Ayad and yourself are plaintiffs in the case and are appearing pro se, each of you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Do both of you intend to ask questions today?
Yes, Mr. Ayad will have his own inquiry as we proceed.
That's fine, as long as we understand that they are separate and discrete, and when you're finished, he'll start, and
That is correct.
when he's finished, we're done, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And Ms. Foyer, if at any time you need a break or you wish to stop and speak with either counsel, you have a certain right to do so. Just indicate you wish to do that. That's fine with us. Okay. We are here to take the deposition of Ms. Foyer. May we have our witness sworn?
Raise your right hand, ma'am. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, sir? Yes.
Ma'am, I'm Michael Troy Watson. I think I've met you before. We've certainly spoken on the phone more than once. We're here to take your deposition today. I do want you to understand, ma'am, that all of your answers to the questions asked today will be taken down by the court reporter. Please, if you do not understand the question, ask me to repeat it, and be sure to speak with a yes or no or whatever your answer is, not with nods of the heads or hand signals or anything, because she won't be able to take that down. We will assume that all of the answers that you proceed with are your answers to the matters as under oath for purposes of this deposition. Okay, ma'am?
Yes.
All right. Ma'am, would you state your name and spell your last name for the record, please?
Betty Sue Foyer, F as in Frank, E-U-E-R.
Okay. And ma'am, are you presently employed?
Yes.
Okay, and where do you work?
I work at the Anti-Defamation League, 505 Terminal Tower, Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, and your date of birth, ma'am?
Mr. Watson, we object. I want to make a continuing objection for the record to any personal information about Ms. Foyer. In her position with the Anti-Defamation League, she has occasion to conflict with certain persons who are extremists in various ways, and we, as a matter of self-protection, not that we cast any or intend to cast any aspersions on any party in this case, but there are extremist organizations out there who are interested in personal information about ADL staff members and their family. So
I didn't ask for a home address.
I just, on the record, I wanted to be clear that we are not going to answer any questions that contain personal information about her or information which can lead to personal information. So we won't provide birth dates, social security numbers, addresses, identity of family members, etc. The witness will be instructed not to answer those kinds of questions, and I hope that's okay. I don't
Please understand, I'm not interested in family members. I did not ask for home address. However, for date of birth, there could be an issue with regard to background record. If you are assuring me in the other question that I asked, that under your personal knowledge, that when she represents that she has no convictions of felonies and stuff like that, and there'd be no need to check on her record as it relates to any of that matters, then that'd be fine with me, based on your personal assurances. And I won't ask for date of birth or social security. I'm not going to ask for the social name. But bear in mind that when I ask those types of questions, which I can only verify as it relates to having an accurate date of birth and et cetera, then I'll ask you for your personal insurances with regard to her answer. Is there any problem with that, sir?
To the extent that I know the answer to the question, I can do that. I can't
It'll
tell you
only
that
be-
I know the answers to those questions because I probably don't. But
It would only be as it relates to matters that would be a public record, nothing further, sir.
go ahead.
Okay. Now, ma'am, let's go back and start with, I said date of birth. You do not have to give that information because I'm agreeing with counsel that that's not an issue here, and I can understand your concerns. But while we're at it and talking about concerns, I would assume then that you are assuming that there are people that would have reason to have issue with you. That is, if they had your personal information, that would be a problem. Could be a problem.
I got a good characterization of that question.
I'll restate it. Ma'am, your attorney has indicated that there's a reason that you don't want your personal information known. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, there are reasons.
Okay. And would you, he's told us what he thinks the reasons are. What would your reasons be?
My attorney's reasons stand for
Same,
mine.
exactly the same, ma'am?
Mhm.
So I assume then you certainly wouldn't want your picture published anywhere, notice of home address, names of your family members or children put on the internet or anything like that. You wouldn't want that to happen anywhere, would you?
Correct.
Okay. And I'm assuming that you understand that when you say there are extremists out there, that they're, I mean, I have to ask, and I'm sorry about this particular question, but basically Anti-Defamation League is a Jewish organization, am I right?
Yes.
And the extremists that you would be referring to would be those that would have issue with Jewish positions or Jews in general. Is that a
Yes.
reasonable assumption?
Yes.
Okay. Well, now, likewise, the same would apply for someone that was, say, opposed to your position. There are, like, Jewish extremists out there, too, are they not?
Yes.
They're on both sides.
Yes.
This is a highly volatile issue. I happen to be black, okay? There's nothing to do with it, but there are highly volatile issues between Jews and Arabs, both here in America and overseas also. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So then, ma'am, it would be reasonable to assume that if having your information out here in America and with the protection of the Anti-Defamation League, et cetera, around and counsel and whatever, you wouldn't want yours out. You would assume that someone acting on their own behalf without that type of protection and assistance wouldn't want theirs out either, would they?
Objection, I don't know.
If you know.
I don't know how she can answer a question that asks her to assume the position of some unknown third parties who have as different positions as possible.
Understood. I'll be real specific.
And same objection. Go ahead.
I'll go real specific. Well, ma'am, as you wouldn't want your information, face, family members, and et cetera, you have a file that you've maintained with regard to Abe Ayad. Isn't that a fair statement, ma'am?
Pictures of his buildings.
Okay. You have a file. I mean, your counsel was kind enough to give me the balance of documents that you had within your file. Is that right?
Yes, they're pictures of his building.
Okay. And you
Or
have
buildings.
copies of lawsuits he filed?
Pardon me?
Copies of lawsuits he filed, correspondence with regard to him, names, phone numbers, and et cetera, of people that had issue with him. That's correct? As part of your file?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know that Abe Ayad's name, address, phone number, picture, home address, pictures of children, all that stuff was placed on the internet and was accessible to extremists?
I have been told that.
Okay. Well, you've seen the
I've
internet
seen it,
yourself, haven't
right.
you? Okay. And actually, when you saw it, you knew at that point that Abe's picture was there, and his family members, home address, all that stuff. Read all about it, did you not?
Objection.
Okay, you did read about it, did you not?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what I was saying, man. You did not want that to happen to you. Fair statement?
Yes.
Okay. Most of the questions I'm asking are going to be pretty easy for yes or no as it relates to that. Just asking for your opinion and basic information. Okay. So now, when did you first become aware that Abe Ayad had these things on the internet about his name, address, kids, family, home, all that stuff?
And let me just note a continuing objection for the record, because I don't see any relevance whatsoever to the lawsuit that we're here on today, but having said that, go ahead.
Okay. When did you first become aware of that?
Of what?
Of the fact that Abe Ayad had name, address, phone number, information, all this stuff on the internet?
I don't really remember when I first became aware of it.
Was it before or after you set up this particular file on Abe Ayad?
I don't remember when I first became aware of it.
Okay. Well, ma'am, just to refresh your recollection, some of the photos that you have here go back to the year 2000 and before. Would it be before that time or after that time?
Well, can I?
You-
I'm not sure that I
If you'd
that
like
I
to go off
understand
the record and
question.
speak with your counsel, it's okay.
Sure.
No problem.
I'll take a cigarette break too.
No, you don't.
Okay. I don't need
No,
that.
sir, you cannot. I apologize.
No problem.
Reasons included that she will be right back. I need those, set it down here somewhere, I didn't have it on the table. What kind of stuff you got from, that's all, depositions. They look in, Melinda's office, please.
For what?
The deposition exhibits. They're on the desk, bring all of them. Yes. I know that. I'm getting to it. Okay. Ready to go back on the record?
Sure.
Okay. Bear in mind, anytime you need a break or want to make an inquiry, please help yourself.
Okay.
Now, what I was asking you, ma'am, as to when you first became aware that there was things on the internet about Abe Ayad, approximately before or about 2000 was the inquiry I was making. You spoke with your counsel. Can you answer the question at this point?
I don't.
Objection to the form. Go ahead.
I was just refreshing you as relates to form, but go right ahead.
I don't remember when I first knew about the postings.
Okay. Did you have any copies of what was on the internet? That is, did you download them and copy them, making them a part of your file?
I did not download them.
Okay. Did anyone in your employer at the Anti-Defamation League make such a download and make it part of your file?
Objection, that's two different questions.
I don't.
Download, well, did anyone download them?
I don't
To
know.
show them to you? Okay. Now, when did you actually first become aware that there was a person by the name of Abe Ayad in existence?
Sometime in the first quarter of 2000.
Okay.
Right.
So, like, okay, excuse me. Okay, that's not it. I wanted the actual exhibits. These are the depositions. There's a stack of exhibits in there too. If you look, please, you may have to take a break if you don't find one. Okay, well, somewhere in the first part of 2000, what is it that you became aware of as it relates to Abe Ayad?
About a business he owned on 55th and Cedar.
How did you become aware of that?
I received a call in my office, or I received a call in my office.
Okay. Do you know who that call was from?
No.
Okay, what was the call about?
About some signs he had, or paintings on I was not the director, so if notes were made, it was not by me.
Okay, so, but you received the call.
Probably, yes.
Okay. Did you send it to the director, or did you take the call and finish whatever the inquiry was about?
I don't remember.
Okay. In any event, when you became aware of Abe Ayad at that time, what did you personally do, if anything?
I would have turned the matter over to the regional director,
Okay, and who was the regional director at that time?
Joel Radner.
Joan Ratner?
Joel.
Joe Ratner? Okay, and when you turned it over to him, did you have any further contact with Joe with regard to Abe Ayad?
Yes.
Okay, and what other further contact did you have?
Probably we discussed the case. I would have answered phone calls in the office and then reported them back to Joel.
Joe or Joel?
Joel.
Joel. Is Joel still in Cleveland?
I believe so.
What type of business does he have?
I don't know.
Was he involved? I mean, Ratner is a pretty famous name in this area, real estate, Forest City material, stuff like that. Is that the type of business that he was in at that time?
No.
Okay. And you don't know what type of business he was in at that time?
He was the regional director of the ADL.
Okay.
He was the ADL.
I get it. And when was the last time you spoke with Joel Ratner about anything?
I'm going to say it's probably been 3 or 4 years.
Okay, now, what relationship did you have with Joel Ratner at the time that you first had this information about Abe Ayad? What was your relationship to Joel? He was the director. What were you doing?
Oh, I was the assistant director. I worked for him.
And what were your duties as assistant director?
I did pretty much, I operated under his direction. I would answer community calls. I would run programs.
Okay. Did you have any other independent responsibilities other than what Joel instructed you to do?
I'm not sure I know what you mean by independent responsibility.
Well, as the assistant, you said you did what he told you to do. But did you have any part of your job that was independent of receiving instruction from him?
Objection.
Right.
Go ahead.
I object to it.
First of all, I did not say that what I did was dependent on him.
Okay.
As in any office, there are responsibilities that people have that are ongoing.
Okay. And that's what I was asking. What were your responsibilities?
I was responsible for community calls, for programming, for assisting with fundraising.
Okay. What do you do in terms of community calls? That means people that call you, or you call people?
Well, I call people about various programs, and people would call in about issues of concern.
Okay. Now, the second thing you indicated was fundraising. And what did you do with regard to fundraising?
Objection. Go ahead.
I would assist in fundraising events.
Okay. There was a third thing you said. Was that programming you were saying?
I'm sure I mentioned programming. I have no idea what programming is.
Okay. The other things that you did other than handling community calls and fundraising, there was a third thing that you just mentioned.
Programming?
Okay. And what were you programming?
We would do programs such as the Jewish Catholic Colloquium, which is a lecture series. We might do programs for young leadership and various programs that the ADL does throughout the country. But they lectures, etc.
Whatever it is, it's an idea to get out and at least a principle or a point of view that the ADL would support. Is that a fair statement?
There would be programs that would promote our mission and involve our volunteers.
That's what I was talking about. There is a direct mission of the ADL. What is that?
Well, our charter states, the charter that was written in 1913, that to stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to ensure justice and fair treatment for all.
Oh.
It's pretty much the mission.
And the mission has as its primary focus the promotion of interest that would be of support to the Jewish community. Fair statement?
The mission is how I said it, those words from the charter.
Promoting the Jewish interest.
No, that's not what it says, so.
Okay. Tell me again. The first
To
part.
stop the defamation of the Jewish people and to ensure fair treatment and justice for all.
I get it. Now, when saying stopping the defamation of Jewish people, can you tell me what you consider defamation?
Objection. You can.
I would use the standard definition of defamation that's speaking ill of someone because of who they are.
I get it. How about from what they believe? Would that be defamation also if you were to criticize something that Jews believe?
Objection.
I'm not sure. I think you're characterizing something that I don't.
Oh, I don't want to characterize that. If you don't know, don't answer. If you don't know, just please say you don't know. When you say defamation of Jewish people, that's why I was asking what you consider to be defamation. So you're saying the standard definition of defamation, correct?
I think I gave a definition, and you can read it back.
I thought you said the standard. Well, if I'm incorrect, you correct me anytime I am incorrect. As it relates to defamation, what I had asked is if someone disagrees with what the standard political position of the Jewish community is, would that be considered to be defamation?
Objection.
If you're not. Only talking about your own personal opinion as director of the Anti-Defamation League.
Well, those are two different things.
I take it back. Let's start first of all in your own personal opinion.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes, ma'am. If there was a political disagreement with the position that you personally believe, and I'm assuming you're Jewish, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I understand. From you being a Jewish person, if there is a political disagreement with you, is that defamation?
No.
Okay. If you are the director, in terms of the director of the Anti-Defamation League, there is a political disagreement with the official position politically of the Anti-Defamation, is that defamation?
No.
Okay. So, if there is a disagreement with formal positions of, let's say, the state of Israel, is that defamation?
No.
So, if there is a disagreement with formal positions of the Anti-Defamation League, is that defamation?
Objection.
No.
Okay. Now, with regard to Abe Ayad, you received a call that had a complaint of some kind. What was the nature of the complaint?
Objection. I'm not sure what point you're talking about, but go
When
ahead.
she first got the call and first became aware of Abe Ayad.
Probably that people were offended by a picture that was up on his business.
I see. Now, for those that were offended for anything that was on the outside of his building, did you keep a record of those who posted?
I don't know.
In reviewing the materials that your counsel provided to you prior to coming here, do you know whether or not there are any names or phone numbers of people that were complaining about Abe Ayad's pictures on his building?
Objection.
I believe that there's a list of phone numbers. I have no idea what it's in regard to.
But you didn't maintain any record with regard to who was calling or complaining with regard to the paintings on Abe's building, did you?
Objection.
No, I don't believe so.
Now, are you aware of anyone else at the Anti-Defamation League that was making records of people that were calling or complaining
No.
about Abe's premises?
No.
Okay.
Ms. Floyd, please let him finish the
Oh,
question
sorry.
before you begin your answer.
Your counsel is absolutely right, because they'll put it in as it turns up, that she's taking down every word
Right.
and or syllable that you say. So, at some point, when there was at least a complaint that you were personally aware of with regard to Abe Ayad, there was some action by the director of the Anti-Defamation League. Is that correct?
Objection, but go ahead.
If you know.
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
When did you become the director?
September 2001.
Well, let's talk about since September of 2001. Once you became the director of the Anti-Defamation League in September of 2001, did you maintain any records with regard to Abe Ayad?
We had files in the office prior to my becoming director, and then files were maintained after we began receiving complaints about a second business that he owned,
What was that second business?
Grandpa's Deli.
And the files that you maintained, and your counsel, pursuant to subpoena, has supplied me with this stack of documents here. Did you give a copy of those files to your counsel?
We went through the files.
Okay. And with regard to what your counsel sent to me, are you familiar with what that was?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just not gonna have it marked at this time. But just showing you this stack here, ma'am. Would you just peruse what was there? I have the original if you'd like to take a look. This is just a copy. Would you take a moment to peruse what is there and tell me if this represents the things that you and your counsel reviewed for forwarding to me pursuant to the subpoena?
I won't be able to do that by just looking at this.
What I'm saying is that
assume so.
Let the record reflect that we delivered approximately 256 pages of documents. The documents which I'm leafing through now appear to be that set of documents.
Thank you.
I don't think you want us to be more specific than that, do you?
That's as specific as I could request. Now, with regard to your files there at the Anti-Defamation League, is it a fact that outside of these 256 pages, there were documents that you did not send to us, that you and your counsel reviewed and weren't sent to us pursuant to the subpoena?
I believe
For the record, Mr. Watson, let me say that we have done the best effort that we could to comply in full with your subpoena de Casticum and your connection with this deposition. We are not aware of any documents in compliance with that subpoena which were not copied and supplied to you.
Well, there were some elements that were privileged and were not provided. And I will read from your letter that you sent to me, excuse me. Sorry, it must be this one, excuse me. We have not provided copies of correspondence to or from counsel, as those documents are privileged, correct? So my question to you, ma'am, I didn't ask you what was in it. I just asked you, there are part of the 256 pages that we have received?
Yes.
Can you tell us how thick a file content was not provided?
No.
Was it more than what you have provided or
No.
less?
I don't know.
Okay. Did you see what was not provided?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell me in what you saw that was not provided, was it of a number of pages greater or less than what is here on the table?
No.
You cannot tell me or you don't know?
I can't tell you.
Okay.
I don't know.
Ma'am, would it be a fair statement if I assume that the records of exchange that you did not provide exceeded the stack of papers that you did provide, for the reason that it was exchanges between you as the director and attorneys representing the Anti-Defamation League or yourself personally?
Would you read back the question?
Objection.
Please do.
Ma'am, would it be a fair statement if I'm assuming that the records of the exchange that you did not provide exceeded the stack of papers that you did provide for the reason that it was exchanged between you and the director and attorneys, representing the Defamation League or yourself personally?
Objection. Objection.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. And with what you saw, where were those records stored? In terms of a file or file cabinet, a box or what?
The files of the ADL are stored in my office. At the ADL.
So those documents that were not provided, were they contained in one file, this same file, or separate files?
I don't know.
But you did see them,
Right.
and you did review these matters as recently as December 2005 with your counsel.
Right.
But you don't recall how many files there were.
Correct.
Don't recall how many pages there were.
Correct.
Okay. Now, ma'am, with regard to your research of records, the original request requested any documents that you had with regard to Abe Ayad and Michael Troy Watson.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find any records of any kind that are related to Michael Troy Watson?
Only what's produced.
Only what's here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I was asking with regard to the content of those files you did not produce, of which you don't know whether it's thicker or less. Don't know how many files there are. Did it contain the name of Michael Troy Watson within any of those files you did not produce?
I believe, according to my counsel's letter to you, that the correspondence we did not produce was privileged, so
Yes.
It's
I didn't
privileged.
ask you what you exchanged or discussed with your counsel. I asked you simply if it had or contained the name of Michael Troy Watson.
I don't know.
But you did look at it.
Yes.
Did it contain the name of Abe Ayad? You don't know that either?
I don't know.
Okay. Now, ma'am, once you established that you were the director, did you have any specific policy as it related to Abe Ayad?
Objection.
And then I don't really understand your question.
I'll try again.
But, and
As,
I'll also note that there's another person who's in the room who's not, I don't believe, a party to this action.
Correct. Well, he's audio tech. And when we get to the point of playing tapes, he'll actually be playing the tapes.
I just wanted the presence noted.
That's fine. His name is T-Rex. Okay. Now, ma'am, you became the director as of September 2001. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you recall having any discussions with Abe Ayad between September 2001 and today? Personally, will you talk to him?
I believe there probably were some early on.
Okay. Do you recall when that was?
No,
Do you recall what was discussed?
we still didn't.
His building? What did you say to him?
Oh, I don't remember the specifics.
What did he say to you?
I don't remember the specifics.
He Did you make any notes with regard to these discussions?
Probably not, unless they're in these documents.
Well, basically speaking then, ma'am, whatever was going on with regard to his buildings and the conversations you had with him wasn't significant enough for you to remember over the last 5 years. Is that a fair statement?
No.
Objection.
So it was significant?
No, your
Objection.
statement wasn't fair, wasn't correct.
Try again. As of today, you don't recall any conversation, the content of any conversations you had with Abe Ayad. Is that your statement?
I don't recall the specific content of any conversation that may have happened in the early part of between 2001 and 2006.
And my question to you, ma'am, with regard to that, had to do with the content of the conversation. You said it was regarding his buildings,
Correct.
but you don't remember what the conversation was that you told him,
I don't remember the
or what
specifics.
he told you?
I don't remember the specifics.
How about in general? Do you have any recollection in general
No.
of what you wanted of him?
Oh, I would want him in general to remove the drawing from his building.
And did he remove the drawings?
Eventually, they were removed.
And did you call him or did he call you?
Don't remember.
Now, ma'am, that may have been the first series of phone calls you mentioned that you might recall. Were there any others after that?
I don't remember.
And how about once Abe Ayad began a radio broadcast on WERE, did you have any discussions with Abe Ayad?
No.
Okay. Now, prior to the radio broadcast time, did you have any discussions with Michael Troy Watson?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Prior to the radio show?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't remember. I met you in court, but I don't remember if we ever spoke.
I see. And subsequent to the beginning of the radio program, did you have any discussions with Michael Troy Watson?
Objection. Go ahead.
If you remember.
I believe you called me once.
Do you remember the subject of that conversation?
No.
Do you recall that while that radio broadcast was on, ma'am, whether or not I called you and asked you to actually appear on the program and be a part of the panel and debate?
I don't remember.
If I were to tell you that that is exactly what I called you about, would that refresh your recollection?
No.
And would you recall whether or not you refused to make an appearance on the program as a panel and part of a debate of an issue in which you were being requested to speak on behalf of the Anti-Defamation?
I don't remember the specifics of the phone call, so I don't remember if I said yes or no.
So you do remember what the topic of the phone call is, do you not?
No.
Okay. If I were to tell you that it was to invite you to appear on the program, would that refresh your recollection?
No.
Would you have appeared on the program had you been invited at that time?
Objection. Totally speculative.
Objection as well.
Assuming that I asked you.
Could you repeat that question, please?
Assuming that when I called you,
Mm.
I invited you to appear on the program as part of the panel discussion and debate, would you have appeared?
Objection. And objection as well.
No.
Okay. Why wouldn't you have appeared? Assuming that I asked you.
You can have objection. You can answer.
There could be a number of reasons why I wouldn't have come up.
Tell me any number that you can think of.
Objection. Go ahead.
Timing, availability, and whether or not it would have been a productive conversation.
Like that. Well, ma'am, if to say to you that I personally told you at any time that you would be available. The program comes on Monday through Friday, every single day. Whenever you would be personally available, would you appear?
Objection.
Assuming that I made such a statement to you, would that have at least eliminated the issue as to time?
Objection to this whole line of hypothetical questions.
Understood.
Objection. Go.
Understood. You may answer.
I can't answer. I don't know this, when you're asking me to come, so I can't answer.
Ma'am, during that period of time when Politically Damn Talk Radio was being broadcast, Monday through Friday, every single day, would you have been prohibited, time-wise only, on the issue of time, would you have been prohibited from appearing on any day that it broadcast?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
I understand.
Mr. Watson, Ms. Foyer has not been party to these proceedings, and maybe it would be helpful if you identified when the radio show was on, what time period it was on.
I thought she was talking about, we were talking about time.
Well, I think you were talking.
But I don't-
Right, and I'm not exactly sure precisely what that block of time is, and I would be interested to know that.
Let's try it this way. Between September 3rd, 2003 and September 6th, 2004, during that entire year, and from May 2004 through September 2004, Monday through Friday, is it your statement you would or would not have been available to appear on the program on any of those days of broadcast?
Objection.
Now we have the time specifics.
I would never have been available on a Friday, and I would assume that in the space of that time, there may have been some time I was available.
I got it. Now, ma'am, you were talking before about timeliness, and that would have prohibited your appearance. Possibly. We've discussed timeliness Monday through Fridays and et cetera now. That I understand. On any day between Monday and Thursday, when the program was being broadcast on a daily basis, is it your statement that timeliness would not have been an absolute bar of your appearance on the program?
Objection.
Could you ask that again?
You said you can't ever appear on Fridays.
Correct.
I get it. So you could have appeared on Monday through Thursday, sometime between May and September of 2004. Isn't that a fact?
I might have been able.
I see. Now, ma'am, you're not always able to come downtown to the radio station at 25th and St. Clair at the time that the program was being broadcast. Is that a fair statement, ma'am? Wouldn't want to come downtown after dark, would you?
That has nothing to, well, no, that's not a fair statement.
Okay. So between Monday and Thursday, the fact that we were being broadcast from WERE studios downtown at 25th and St. Clair wouldn't have been something that would prohibit your appearance. Is that a fair statement?
The location?
The location.
No.
Okay. It also broadcast after dark. That wouldn't prohibit your appearance either, would it?
No.
Okay. Well, ma'am, also in the discussions that I had with you, do you recall that I indicated you could simply appear by phone as a phone guest? Do you recall that?
Objection.
I don't recall the conversations with you, so I wouldn't recall.
Okay. Well, let's assume that I also offered you the opportunity to appear simply by being on the phone and answering calls from guests during the program. Would you have agreed to do that?
Objection again. This whole hypothetical question thing is troublesome, Mike.
I understand.
She's here to answer questions about facts. If you want to ask her fact questions, she'll be more than happy to do her best to answer them.
We're almost finished with the hypotheticals.
We'll indulge her for a little bit longer.
And I'll bring it to a head. You could have
I
appeared on my
need
phone.
to ask my counsel a question.
No problem. You want to whisper in his ear, or you want to step out? Whichever you want.
Mike, come to your camera.
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. Okay, going back on the record. I was asking you, ma'am, that if during that period of time that I've outlined while the program was on, and during the period of time that it was on every single day, if I had offered you an opportunity to appear on the program as a part of a panel discussion and debate, even by phone connection, where you would be on the phone, you wouldn't have to leave your home or your office, is it your statement that you would not have appeared on the program?
Objection.
I was just trying to restate my last question. Is that your statement, ma'am?
I think my statement really was, I don't know.
But the fact is, you never did appear on the program, did you?
No, I was never on the program.
And the fact is, you were invited to appear, were you not?
You said, I don't know. I don't recall a phone conversation.
Well, now, at some point, with regard to politically damned talk radio, you did have some notes and records with regard to the radio program, did you not?
No, I don't believe I do.
Never at any time.
I don't think so.
Well, ma'am, did you review these documents that your counsel supplied to us before you came here or gave them to him?
Yes.
And did you see within these documents records, notes, and phone calls with regard to politically damned talk radio? You didn't see them in there?
I could go through them again, but I don't recall any in regards to the radio show.
Take your time to look through them, as you put it.
I don't recall that.
Okay. How about newspaper articles in Plain Dealer or the Cleveland Jewish News? You read both of those, don't you?
Yes.
You didn't know anything about that?
I believe there are articles from there, but
From where?
from one or the other or both.
Okay. Well, you did talk with those reporters of the Cleveland Jewish News, did you not?
I often talk with them, but about what?
About the politically damned talk radio. Did you talk to Cleveland Jewish News about the radio program?
I believe I did.
Okay. You recall what you said to them?
No.
And even though you had at least an opportunity to review these aspects that your counsel provided to us, that didn't refresh your recollection before you came here?
Objection.
Let me
No,
restate.
I don't remember.
You did have an opportunity to review matters with your counsel before you came to this deposition, did you not?
Yes.
Objection. You did know I was going to ask you questions, correct?
Yes.
You did know that it was regarding politically damned talk radio?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any contact with anybody representing Radio 1 prior to coming to this deposition today?
No.
Did you have any discussions with regard with any attorneys representing Radio 1 before you came to this deposition today?
No.
Did you receive any phone calls from any attorneys representing Radio 1 before you came here today?
No.
So the only persons that you talked to with regard to this deposition are your own counsel.
Correct.
But you did talk to me too, didn't you?
You did call me about scheduling one deposition.
So that answer is yes, you talked to me too. Now, ma'am, would you take a moment to peruse your documents you have here? See if there's anything in there that refreshes your recollection about statements, records, or reports regarding the radio program. If you can.
You through these?
Sure, why not turn everything off, take whatever time you need, we'll take a break. Okay.
Cool, I can have a cigarette that you've been denying me.
No cigarettes in.
I can go to my smoking room, brother. I got a cubicle.
Okay, let me turn this off. Just to review your records?
Yes, and I did not see anything about the radio program.
I see. Now, ma'am, with regard to what was in the file you reviewed, the information that has been supplied, is it your statement, ma'am, that there is nothing contained within any aspect of these records relating to the radio program?
Objection.
When I went through these just a few minutes ago, I did not see anything relating to the radio program.
Now, ma'am, did you receive any calls at the ADL with regard to the radio program?
Yes,
And I believe you indicated that you have a policy of recording the calls with regard to complaints.
no, I did not say that.
Is there a policy with regard to calls and complaints with regard to the issues of importance to the ADL?
With regard to the calls into the office about a radio show or something like that?
Yes, ma'am.
No, there is no policy.
Was there any record kept of any calls to the ADL with regard to the program?
Not that I can find.
Is that to say it does not exist in any way
Correct.
in your records?
Correct.
I see. Now, ma'am, with regard to any written complaints that you've had, if any, received at the ADL, were they kept as a matter of record?
There were no written complaints.
So with regard to the radio program, whatever the complaints were not significant enough to make a written record of the calls, and no one issued a written report
Objection.
of complaint
Objection.
Objection.
that you're aware of.
That's your characterization, not mine.
Well, as it relates to the paintings on the wall, all of what we have here, these 256 pages, are all related to the paintings on the wall. Is that a fair statement?
Objection.
Most of the documents here, or many of them, are about a lawsuit that was filed.
Okay. That was a lawsuit against the ADL and the JDL. And
Yes,
Judge
I believe
McGinty-
so, yes.
Right. And that had to do with someone putting Abe's name, his family, and other information on the internet and placing him in jeopardy.
Objection, the substance of that lawsuit will, the complaint in the lawsuit will speak for the substance of it.
Well, you know.
I don't think she can answer that question.
Well, you know what the lawsuit was about, right?
Yes,
And what was it about that you recall?
the lawsuit was about actions of the JDL, not the ADL.
I see. It was actions of someone placing information on the internet and accessible that you say had nothing to do with the ADL, only the JDL.
Correct.
Correct. And of course, the ADL was voluntarily dismissed from that case when it was determined that you were not the originators of what was on it.
I don't know the exact disposition, if it was a voluntary dismissal.
Right within your own files,
Right.
voluntary dismissal. You don't know?
I'm not gonna look. I mean, I could,
If
but
you
I
don't-
don't know.
Of the record,
You don't.
it is.
Right.
I don't think there's any dispute.
Now, ma'am, once that photos and records, complaints, phone calls, and et cetera, with regard to the pictures and murals on the wall that you have here, once this was compiled, where was it maintained?
I don't understand your question.
Well, what I have here came from some location. What location did these records that your counsel provided, where did they come from?
The records are in my office.
I see.
The ADF.
And once you searched as it relates to the subpoena, is it your statement that the entirety of all records that you have relating to Abe Ayad are contained in this stack of documents here, except for those privileged communications with your counsel?
Objection.
Yes.
And that also applies to Michael Troy Watson.
Objection.
This
Yes.
is all you got.
Yes.
Now, are there any other records maintained in any other fashion other than in this file that you described?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Do you have any audio tape recordings of the radio program?
No.
Do you have any videotape recordings of Abe Ayad, Mike Watson, or any aspect relating to politically damned talk radio?
No.
Do you have any computer records involved with, in your possession relating to politically damned talk radio?
No.
Okay. So, ma'am, is it your statement that no other such records exist? No audio, video, or computer records?
Not within my possession.
And they never did they?
Within my possession?
Yes. Wasn't anything else?
No.
Okay. Now, how many calls did you receive, if any, with regard to the radio program?
I don't know.
Can you tell me whether it was more than one?
More than
Can you tell me whether it was more than 100?
it was certainly not more than 100.
Isn't it a fact, ma'am, it was less than 10?
I don't know.
But you don't have any recollection of it ever being more than 10, do you?
I didn't say that. I don't know.
But you didn't count it.
Correct.
Well, ma'am, there are things that the Anti-Defamation League receives high attention to in some fashion, and you get hundreds of calls about it, aren't they?
Objection.
You've had high response of something the Anti-Defamation League was dealing with in some fashion over the years. Isn't that a fact, ma'am?
I don't know what you mean by high response.
Well, have you ever received at any time like hundreds of calls about something?
No.
Have you ever received 50 calls about something?
Except in response to events, I would have to say no.
But in response to events, you might have got 50 calls.
Programs that we would run, those kinds of events, not events that would take place in the community.
I understand, not in the
Right.
community, but if, say,
A
for
program.
example,
And
you could get 50 calls.
Correct, and I take it back, if we're running a program, and 200 people could come, so we may get RSVPs from 200 people.
And can you name any such event where you had 200 calls come into your office?
Probably for fundraising events or,
Well, any particular event that you remember?
I would imagine that we had responses of over 200 to our Cleveland fundraising dinner in 2004.
Right. So that was maybe a year ago,
Mm-hmm.
and you do remember that your office got, maybe 200 calls or something.
I remember because we had 400 people's events, so
Understood.
I don't remember the phone call.
I see. So, do you have any recollection of any incident where you received 25 calls?
Objection. Go ahead.
An incident, what do you mean by
An
incident?
event, incident, complaints, incident occurring in the Middle East, whatever it is, where there was 25 calls to the Anti-Defamation League.
If you're asking me exactly 25 calls to this event, I have to tell you I don't know.
Okay, I understand. Do you have any recollection of you receiving 10 calls of complaints with regard to any particular issue relating to the Anti-Defamation League?
I don't remember the specific number of complaints for any one issue.
I see. Well, I understand. I'm not saying a specific number. Do you have any recollection of ever receiving a series of calls that was approximately 10 calls?
Objection.
Yes.
All right. And which do you recall? What events do you recall that had approximately 10 calls of complaint?
I would go back to the drawing at Mr. Ayad's businesses. I would go back to some incidences in Cincinnati. I would go back to the radio show. I would go back to any number of programs that we've run, even so much as responses, you know, that kind of thing. There are a number over the past 6 years.
So at least since 2003, you have personal recollection that you received approximately 10 calls complaining about the murals on Mr. Ayad's building.
Objection. Go ahead.
I don't recall the
These are
exact
what you
number.
saw.
I don't recall the
I said
exact number.
I didn't ask you for an exact number. I said approximately 10
I don't
calls. Okay. That's what you were just telling me. Is it a fair statement then, ma'am, that you received approximately 10 calls with regard to politically damn talk radio?
I don't remember the number.
Was it more than 10?
I don't remember.
Was it less than 10?
I don't remember.
I see. Now, ma'am, with regard to your complaints and issues relating to the murals on the wall, your counsel has provided us with a couple of lists here. And can we have this one, Mark? Is that one or a?
One.
This one comes. Thank you. You have one inside this pile here too. Take a look at deposition exhibit, for your deposition 1. Can you tell me what that document is?
It's a list of people and phone numbers.
And do you know where they came from? Who put this list together?
Don't know who put the list together.
But it was part of your file,
Mm-hmm.
maintained in your records.
In my office, right?
Now, ma'am, taking a look at items number 1 through 8,
Mm-hmm.
underneath the head note of telephone numbers, what are those phone numbers for?
I don't know.
Well, they say on it. Abe Ayad and listing of names. Who are they?
There are a list of names, starting with Abe Ayad and ending with the city planner at Streetscape.
Okay. Well, now, can you tell me why these numbers would have been maintained within your file?
No.
So somehow Abe's personal residence and home phone numbers and fax numbers are in your file, but you don't know why.
I don't know that those are his personal home residential numbers. This was a piece of paper in the Abe Ayad file, remembering that I have not always been the regional director.
I got it. Well, ma'am, let's assume that this document maintained in your files, provided to me by your counsel, and stating number 1, Graham Abe Ayad, with 3 numbers, one of which is marked as a pager, another one is a fax number. Let's assume that these are his numbers for Abe Ayad. Let's assume that. Do you know whether or not you gave these numbers out to anyone for purposes of having them call Abe Ayad?
Objection.
Well, now you did.
Whether I did?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Do you know whether or not the official position of the Anti-Defamation League was to give out these numbers for Abe Ayad? His pager number, his home phone number, and his fax number.
The official position?
You guys gave these numbers out, didn't you?
I have never given these numbers out, and the position of the ADL is the telephone numbers given to us are not for publication.
I got it.
So I can't tell you they weren't given out. I can tell you the position is that they shouldn't have been given out.
Okay. But you can't say they weren't.
By anyone in the world? No, I can't say
I got
that.
it. By the way, there's somebody listed here, Jerry Chagin. Who is that?
I have no idea.
All right. But now, here also on this same document is a list of approximately 10, there's actually 12, approximately 10 callers to the ADL with regard to Abe Ayad signs. Came from your file. List here specifically, callers to the office. Is that a fair statement, ma'am?
I have no idea why those people called the office.
I didn't say that. I said, ma'am, on your list, it says callers to the office, does it not?
Correct.
Then it has a list of names and phone numbers.
Correct.
Correct? Now before, you told me, based on your recollection, there was approximately 10 calls with regard to his sons. On this list, there are 12 names. Is that a fair statement?
No, I do not know why these people are called callers to the office.
Okay.
I do not know that, so I can't equate one to the other.
It's just maintained in your file about Abe Ayad and listed as callers to the office, but you don't know why.
They're not my files, they're the ADL's files, and I do not know why these people are listed here.
Ma'am, you're appearing here in your capacity as the director of the ADL, are you not?
Yes.
Objection, there's no reason to be argumentative.
I'm trying not to be argumentative, I'm just laying a foundation. And you are presented through your counsel the records that are maintained in the files in your office, correct?
Yes.
But you have no idea why these approximately 12 names would be on a sheet from your file under the heading of callers to your office.
I do
Objection.
not.
Okay. Now, ma'am, with regard to the radio program, you have indicated previously that there may have been approximately 10 calls to your office with regard to the radio program, or less. Is that a fair statement?
No.
Could have been 10 calls or more.
I believe the statement was somewhere between more than one and less than 100.
Well, I'm asking. You also at one time indicated several topics of which there were approximately 10 calls. And I'm asking you again, and let us be specific. Do you recall if there were more than 10 calls to the ADL with regard to Politically Damn Talk Radio?
No, I do not.
No. Do you have any records within your possession anywhere, paper, computer, video, audio, that reflect the number of calls that the ADL received in complaint of the program Politically Damn Talk Radio?
No.
Okay. Now, did you personally receive any calls with regard to Politically Damn Talk Radio? Objection. Good.
I received calls in my office.
Okay. Do you remember how many calls you personally received and talked to people about Politically Damn Talk Radio?
Objection.
Can you tell me whether or not it was less than 10?
No.
Can you tell me whether or not it was more than 10?
No.
Okay. Whatever it was, any calls you received were so insignificant to you, ma'am, that you cannot recall the numbers of them today. Is that a fair statement?
No, it's not a fair statement.
Were there any significant calls you received?
Pardon me?
Were there any significant calls you received regarding Politically Damn Talk Radio?
We believe that when the community calls us complaining that they're important calls, then we take them seriously.
Okay. When you say the community, do you mean the black residents of the city of Cleveland?
The community, I do not ask the race, religion, or ethnic background of the people that call.
Well, you certainly know when you talk to someone whether or not they are black or white. Certainly, absolutely, whether or not they're Jewish.
No, I do not.
Objection. All right. So you received calls that you do not remember the number of, and do you recall any of the content of any of these calls?
I believe that the calls were complaining about the nature of the discussions on the radio show.
On a particular day, particular
Well,
week, or the entire program every day it was on?
It would have been about what the people had heard, but I do not recall any in specifics.
what the people had heard. And the community was complaining.
Mhm.
And you have no idea who these people are, right?
Correct.
You don't know how many there were, right?
Correct.
And you don't remember what you talked to them about.
I remember in general what I spoke with them about.
In
Not
general,
specific.
what do you recall?
They called, they told me they were upset or found what was being talked about on the radio distasteful. And that was the general tenor of the phone calls.
Well, you received calls about programs before, have you not?
Sure.
And you remember any of these programs you're talking about?
No. I received the phone calls and deal with them as the phone calls come in.
Were these calls that said they were upset? Well, did they call and say that they were upset because politically damn talk radio should be on more hours?
No, I don't recall any of those conversations.
So these conversations that you don't recall and you don't remember why these people were upset, you don't remember the number of calls, and you have no record of them in any way, shape, or form. Is that a fair statement?
Could you repeat that, please?
Reach it back for me, will you, ma'am?
I have a question. So these conversations that you don't recall, you don't remember why these callers were upset. You don't know, you don't remember. A number of these calls, you have no record of them in any way, shape, or form. Is that a fair statement?
No.
Okay. So let's make it fair. Do you recall why they were upset?
They were upset about the content of the radio show.
What about the content of the radio show were they upset about?
They felt that the views being bandied around were untrue, anti-Semitic, and not helpful to the Cleveland community.
So is that the entire program or one caller that called in on the program?
I only can tell you the, excuse me, in general, the calls I received, and that would be the tenor of the calls. I cannot tell you specifically what they objected to. I do not remember.
Okay. Well, let us try again. You said something was anti-Semitic. That's what you remember.
That was
Right.
a characterization I gave the phone call,
I
the
see.
content of the phone call.
Do you know whether or not on the program there was any discussion about Abe Ayad's land being confiscated by the state of Israel?
I do not know.
Would that be anti-Semitic in your opinion? Objection.
I don't know about the conversation.
Okay, I'm asking you, if someone said, and Abe got on the air and said, my land in Israel was confiscated by the state of Israel, would that be anti-Semitic in your opinion?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I don't know the context. I don't know what you're talking about.
I just gave you the statement. You can't tell me whether or not my land has been confiscated by the state of Israel. Is that anti-Semitic? Objection. That
No.
statement?
Not in that 4 or 5 word phrase, no.
Okay. How about the American taxpayers are sending too much money to the state of Israel that needs to be spent here in the inner city of Cleveland? Is that anti-Semitic?
No.
Objection. How about religious discussions and reading verbatim from the Torah or the Talmud? Is that anti-Semitic? Objection.
I don't know the conversation. I don't know what you did.
Well, I
did
didn't
not
say what
do.
I said. Reading verbatim from the Torah or the Talmud, is that anti-Semitic?
Not necessarily.
Objection. Okay. Well, let's go to other types of discussion. How about a discussion involving Islam? Islam is a beautiful religion. Is that anti-Semitic? Objection.
No.
Okay. How about criticizing other radio talk show hosts, such as Lori Roth? You know who Lori Roth is, don't you?
No.
Never heard her at all?
No.
Okay. How about criticizing other radio talk show hosts, such as Lori Roth, for putting on guests that ask that all Arabs be destroyed by nuclear weaponry? Is that anti-Semitic?
Objection.
If you know.
No.
Okay. Well, let us get into other discussions about what is or what isn't anti-Semitic.
Objection. I don't think that that's appropriate for this deposition. You're here to ask her questions relating to facts within the state of her knowledge. You're not here to quiz her about her own philosophical views about political subjects or otherwise, and I don't think it's an appropriate line of questioning.
Understood. I was asking in her official capacity as it relates to her being both an individual and the director of the Anti-Defamation League. I understand your objection.
In either way, in either characterization.
There's a reason for the questions, and I'm laying a foundation for my next line of questioning, which is...
Ask factual questions.
I'll continue on. Now, ma'am, with regard to any of these calls that you took that said that the content of the program was anti-Semitic, did you make any notes about what the complaint of anti-Semitism was?
No.
Okay. Well, there are things that are anti-Semitic. You and I both would agree. And I'm very opposed to anti-Semitism myself, personally, as I believe you are. And I also believe Mr. Lowry is. I wanted to lay that so you understood. All right. With that understanding, then, was there anything that you personally heard on Politically Damned Talk Radio that you felt was anti-Semitic?
I've never heard the radio show.
Did anyone ever play any part of this radio program for you?
I don't know. Don't recall.
Well, if you said you never heard the program, that means you never heard it live. I'm asking you, did anybody record what was on there and then play it for you and say, hey, listen to this?
I don't remember anybody playing for me, but I've for sure never heard it live.
Okay. And you have no recollection of anyone ever recording it and bringing it down to your office and playing it for you and say, hey, listen to this. That never happened.
I don't recall. I don't know if it happened or not. I don't recall. Wouldn't have been in my office. It might have been over the phone, but I'm not. I don't recall.
But even over the phone, you'd remember whether or not you heard something drastically anti-Semitic over the air, wouldn't you?
I don't recall.
Do you ever recall having any personal aversion to something you heard being stated on the air as part of Politically Damned Talk Radio broadcast?
Objection. She already said she never heard the radio station.
That's lying. She just mentioned something about over the phone. That's why I was asking.
I never heard it live, so I couldn't react to that, and I don't recall whether I heard it over the phone, is what I said.
I see. Or any recording thereof.
I don't recall.
Now, ma'am, once you heard that Politically Damned Talk Radio was being broadcast, and these calls that you had complaining about the program that you said existed occurred, did you bother to do any other investigation with regard to the program?
I'm not sure I understand what you mean.
Well, what information did you have from any person, anywhere, that helped you form an opinion about Politically Damned Talk Radio, the broadcast?
I still don't know what.
Still don't know?
I still don't understand the question.
Well, ma'am, you don't know how many people even called you to complain about it. You made no record of it. You heard no radio broadcast or excerpts from it. You heard from me personally, and you don't recall why you did not agree to appear on the program and debate the issue. My question to you, ma'am, is, after you had all of that information that I just talked to you about, is there anything else you had from any source with regard to politically damned talk radio?
Objection.
First of all, I believe that you mischaracterized when you said you offered me an invitation and I didn't come on the radio show. I don't recall the conversation. I don't recall you asking me.
Well,
to
let
come on
me
the show.
restate it. Let me restate everything so I make sure it's perfect. You had a call of complaint, the number of which you have no idea. Correct?
Correct.
You have no record of any call of complaint. Correct?
Correct.
You've never heard the program ever. Correct?
I never heard the program live, and I don't recall if I heard a tape piece of it.
Yes, ma'am. You do recall speaking to me, and I said that I invited you on the program, but you don't recall whether or not that was said at all. Is that correct?
I spoke to you, and I do not recall the conversation.
I got it. I'm asking you, ma'am, was there any other source anywhere that you used or had contact with regard to politically damned talk radio?
I spoke with Mr. Bivens at the station.
Okay. Well, before you contact Mr. Bivens, I'm saying.
No.
Okay. Now then, you just mentioned that you spoke with Mr. Bivens at the station.
Mhm.
How many times did you talk to Mr. Bivens?
I don't recall, but I think it's about 2.
All right. What did you say to Mr. Bivens?
Well, I don't recall the exact conversation, but I would have told him that we had some complaints in the office, and could he review the tapes of the program.
Okay. And what did he say to you?
I'm sure he was very pleased and said he would do that. I don't recall.
Okay. At any time, did you tell him that you wanted the program off the air?
No.
Okay. At any time, did he tell you, hey, I'll take it off the air?
I don't recall it.
Did he ever tell you that he would do as you instructed in terms of reviewing tapes of the program?
I believe from a review of the emails that were attached to some other depositions that he was going to review the tapes of the program. But I don't have independent.
Emails attached to another deposition? What are you talking about? They're not anywhere within your...
No. I was sent the portions of the deposition, another party's deposition that related to me, and I reviewed them before this,
I see.
and it had emails on it
I see. Where'd you get that?
from my attorney.
I see. And it was a deposition of...
I'm actually not sure, but I think it was people from Radio 1. I think it was Mr. Evans.
And then you had a chance to read over that deposition transcript and emails and et cetera before you came to this deposition here today?
I had a chance to look at the portion of it that referred to me and look at 2 emails.
I see. And those emails that someone gave you from a prior deposition that you reviewed with your counsel, I'm not asking you what you and your counsel did it give you a refreshment of your recollection as to what had occurred during that period of time?
I just told you that by reviewing those emails, I was able to say that we probably spoke twice, and that Mr. Bevins said he reviewed the tapes.
Okay. Well, outside of that refreshing of your recollection from what Mr. Bivens had testified to in his deposition and the documents from his deposition, outside of that, did you have any recollection of talking to Mr. Bivens?
I recall talking to him. I couldn't tell you what he said.
I see. And you don't recall what he said to you either?
Correct?
I see. Did you recall any other actions that you took other than what you refreshed your recollection with prior to this deposition?
I don't understand what you're asking me.
Counsel, do you have the documents that she used to refresh her recollection with regard to her contact with Mr. Bivens? you know whether or not Mr. Halavati himself had those excerpts or that deposition taken and those exhibits provided to your counsel for you to review prior to coming here today?
I don't know.
You don't know where they came from?
It came from my counsel.
I said, you don't know how he obtained them? I said, how much time did you spend reviewing them?
I read them, so I would assume that it took me about 10 minutes.
Can I have this one, Mark, please? Joe, you already have one of these. Do you want another one?
Yes, please. I don't have with me.
Now, ma'am, showing you what has been marked as plaintiff's exhibit 2, would you take a look at page D0001? Is this one of the documents that was provided to you by Radio 1 through your counsel to examine?
No.
Well, let's just take a look at that, if you would, please.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see a date on that document?
July 26th.
Can you tell me whether or not you had conversation with Mr. Bevins on or about July of 2004?
From this document, yeah.
Yes. Well, now, ma'am, you identified that the callers that you had talked to had some issue with regard to the Cleveland community.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't correct, was it?
Yes, it is.
No. So any call that came to you did not indicate that it was a show negative to the Jewish community?
Objection. Are you asking her a question related to this exhibit that you have in front of her and asked her to
Yes.
look at?
I've asked her to take a look.
She hasn't identified this exhibit.
I didn't ask her to yet.
Well,
I'm only talking about her calls.
Okay. She couldn't do it.
That's fine. Okay.
Could you ask me that question again?
All right. You talked to Mr. Bivens, and you've indicated previously that you had no idea whether or not the calls that you received were from blacks or whites, Catholics, or anybody else. Right?
Yes.
Now, when you called Mr. Bivens, did you tell him that the calls you received were negative to the Jewish community?
I don't remember.
So if in fact he claimed that you said that, Mr. Bevins would not be telling the truth, would he?
Objection.
It's not a fair characterization
Understood.
of the testimony.
You can answer.
No, you're taking what I said and switching it around. I don't recall.
Okay. I'm asking you, ma'am, if Mr. Bevins published in his memo of July 26, 2004, that your call to him complained that the show was negative to the Jewish community, that would not be true, would it?
Objection.
Objection.
I don't, that's Mr. Bevins's.
I'm asking what you said.
Well, she already
I
told you,
told you I
Mike, that
don't
she didn't
know.
recall what she
I'm
what
trying
the
again.
was.
You indicated to us under oath, just in previous questions, that the show was negative to the community. Correct?
No, that's not her testimony at all. Her
Do
testimony.
you recall that that was your testimony?
No.
Okay. Do you recall that I asked you, were these callers black or white? Or certainly you would know if they were Jewish. I asked you that, didn't I?
Yes.
All right. And you indicated you had no idea whether they were black or white, or whether or not they were Jewish.
Correct.
All right.
But I
Now I'm
believe-
asking you,
I
ma'am.
object. I don't think that's a fair characterization either. I believe those questions, Mike, were in general. They weren't related to any particular.
I
phone
understand your objection, but I would ask that whatever your objection is, be fully stated, which you have a right, but not offer a suggestion of an answer to your client.
call. I'm telling you, suggest an
Okay.
answer. I'm trying to keep the record correct.
Thank you. And full right to make whatever objection you wish. I'm asking you, ma'am, you do remember your conversations with Mr. Bivens, do you not?
I do not remember the content of my conversation with Mr.
Okay.
Bennett.
You don't remember,
Correct.
but you did call him.
I believe that I either called him, I believe I called him.
Okay, and you do remember that whatever you were talking about was about politically damn talk radio.
Correct.
All right. Now, if Mr. Bevins says in his memo that you called him and said the show was negative to the Jewish community, that would not be true, would it?
That's not what I said.
Okay, I agree. It's not what you said.
I don't,
Thank you.
I,
Now, hold on.
Well, let her finish her answer.
She finished her answer.
No,
I'm going
she
to the
didn't.
next-
You don't like the way she answered, and you're
No, I
cutting her
like the
off
way
before
she answered. I don't
finished.
have a problem.
No, you do like the way she answered,
I
but
sure
it wasn't
do.
a complete answer, and you're not letting her finish her sentence.
What I told you about suggesting.
I'm not
that she did.
suggesting, I'm arguing with you directly. You
No,
didn't
Don't argue with
appropriately.
me, sir. I will go on to my next question, sir.
The
Now,
record
ma'am.
needs that she has the right to respond fully to any question that's posed to her,
That's
and
correct.
you don't have the right to cut her off in the middle of an answer.
I did.
And that's what you're doing.
Okay, now let me go on to the next question.
Not
Did you-
until she has an opportunity to finish her answer.
As soon as I ask the next question.
No,
she's
there's a
continuing.
question that she didn't finish answering, that you didn't give her an opportunity to finish it. She's not going to answer another question until she gets an opportunity to answer that one.
That's up to you, sir. Now I'm asking you, ma'am. You did receive calls saying people were upset, yes or no?
I instruct the witness not to answer this question or any other question until she has an opportunity to fully answer the question that she was not allowed to finish her answer to.
No, she was allowed to finish, but I'm going on to the next question.
Well, we are not going to continue this deposition any longer unless she has an opportunity to answer the question. And if she
Whatever you
was
like.
not allowed to.
Now I'm going on to my next
No,
question.
then we will leave, Mr. Watson. We will pick up our coats and walk out of here right now.
Entirely up to you, sir.
Okay, we're finished. Let the record reflect that we're leaving.
That's up to you, sir. Does that mean I don't get an opportunity to make copies of the photos? That has nothing to do about being upset
You're
about her
absolutely-
answer.
You're absolutely right. I'll tell you what.
I let us finish, we're just gonna finish, we're gonna end up with another day. You know,
Well-
the judge is gonna order me to finish this deposition.
And he's going to order you to allow her to answer the question.
Just
we
take your exception, have it printed, and then you can do what you
Let's-
want, let us just finish.
Give her an opportunity to have that question read back and the answer up to the point where she was interrupted, and we will be happy to let her finish the answer and go on with this deposition.
Why don't I do
That's
this?
your call.
Why don't we compromise, sir, okay? Do you remember the question, Ms. Foyer?
that you are back and
That-
forth
That
on?
he's upset about your answer.
No, that
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to answer.
Well, why don't you finish your answer?
Well, I
Just
would like
please,
the
Mr.
question read back to me.
Sure, will you please read back the question and the answer up to the point counsel.
Please
started
note,
going
have the
into
file reflect my hilarity. Go right ahead, sir. Have her answer whatever you would like.
Thank you, Mike. You should answer what she wants to answer.
I can't allow to find it.
Actually, I didn't think that you'd have a problem with her answer. I expected Mr. Locke to
right, Mr. Jordan?
No.
Anybody want to offer anything? Some water?
Yeah, there's water here. What's wrong?
Okay, I'll read this as the last question.
I have to get it. We're out of distilled.
You know what, I'll drink some coffee. As long as it's wet.
Okay. Let me get it for you. Hey, Tony, would you do us a favor? Just come across the street.
Oh, no, Mike, don't, you know what, it's not worth it.
I'm gonna bring you some water, but I'm gonna have some more here anyway. We should have had it, sorry.
Yeah, I realize it.
Plain water, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're all set here?
Yes.
All right, let's go back. Well, I can't go back on the record, but you're reading the question and her answer, and then she wants to finish it.
Question, Mr. Bivens says in his memo that you called him and said the show was negative to the Jewish community. That wouldn't be true, would it? Answer, that's not what I said.
That's not what she said. To kind of help us out, can I just simply repeat the question and she can answer it again? Ms. Pruitt?
Let's go back on the record. We've agreed that the last question and answer will be stricken from the record unless Mr. Watson will answer it again.
I didn't agree it was strictly
Okay.
on the record. I'm just saying I'll repeat it and allow her a full opportunity to answer once again.
That's fine, I'm sorry, that's fine.
And I'm going to object to the extent that this is not the exact same question as previously stated.
I don't blame you.
Because I'm not sure that was the question that was read back. I'm not certain that that was the immediately prior question. Go ahead.
Oh, you think about different questions.
Yes.
I ask you, ma'am, you did talk to Mr. Bivens about politically damn talk radio program. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right. And when you did talk to him, do you recall stating to him, and I quote, "The show is negative to the Jewish community," unquote?
I do not recall the specifics of the conversation.
That's not my question. I ask you, did you say that to him?
Objection.
I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
In your conversation that you had about politically damn talk radio, did you generally tell him that the show was negative to the Jewish community?
I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
What do you recall about the conversation, if anything?
I called Mr. Bevins to let him know about the complaints, and
Good.
that's the in general
About
memory
complaints.
about the radio show, and that's the in general memory of my conversation with Mr. Bevins.
You called him to talk about complaints from people that you don't know who are, right?
I don't remember their names.
And you don't know whether they were Jewish, white, black, Hispanic, or anything, right?
Correct.
And when you did talk to him, you said something about these same people being upset, correct?
I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
So
The
you don't remember whether you even told him these people were complaining, did you?
No, I would have told them they were complaining.
And they were upset,
That they were complaining.
complaining. And you never at any time told him that they were complaining about the show being negative to the Jewish community? Did you?
Objection.
Forget about his objection. You're
I
the
don't-
object. You're the answer. Go ahead.
I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
I see. So my question to you would be, ma'am, if Mr. Bivens not only recalled your conversation, but wrote it down in a memo, and if Mr. Bivens said that you told him that you received calls who were upset because the show was negative to the Jewish community, would Mr. Bivens be lying in this memo?
I can characterize
Objection.
Mr. Bivens' memo. I don't recall the specifics. That does
I
not
didn't
reflect
ask
on
you
his
about
memo.
recalling. I asked you specifically, ma'am, and you do have, I mean, you don't have Alzheimer's, do you?
Objection.
Do you?
Objection.
I don't have all.
And Mike, I'm
Do
going to
you have
object. You're
any-
not happy with the answers to the questions. You're
Sorry, Mr.
continuing to
Ali.
harass her and badger the witness and getting very argumentative, and I object to this entire line of questioning.
Go right ahead and object, okay? Now, ma'am, are you under the influence of any medication that would affect your recollection?
Objection.
Now, we're talking about 7/26/04. You do remember the conversation, correct?
I told you I do not recall the specifics of the conversation.
I didn't ask you about specifics. I said you remember talking to Bivens, don't you?
I remember talking to Mr. Bevins.
Okay,
I don't.
that's it. Yes.
I have a
Now
right
then,
to
next,
finish
ma'am.
my answer.
Next,
And
ma'am.
you're taking that date from this memo. I don't know about this memo.
Yes, ma'am. This is a memo you reviewed before you came here.
No, I did
Objection,
not.
she testified that she did not review it.
Now, let's try again. Very specific. When you talked to Mr. Bivens, did you talk to him about a reaction in the Jewish community?
I don't recall the specifics of my conversation with Mr. Bivens.
Did you mention Jewish at all?
I don't recall
Objection.
the specifics of my conversation with Mr. Bivens.
Did you identify yourself as being with the Anti-Defamation League?
I'm sure I did.
Okay. And the Anti-Defamation League is one that is to stop defamation of Jewish people, isn't it?
And to ensure fair treatment and justice for all.
Okay. Were you calling him about fair treatment and justice for all?
I was calling him about the complaints that I received.
I didn't
from
ask
the
you that,
office.
man. I asked you, did you call him about fair treatment and justice for all?
Yes,
Okay. And all included the Jewish community, did it not?
yes.
Okay. So in fact, ma'am, the call you made did include a call on behalf of the Jewish community,
I
did it not?
do not recall.
That's
the
either a yes or no.
specifics. I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
I don't blame you. Now let's go on. Did you ask him to check the content of the program?
In my normal course of these calls, I would have asked him to check the content.
Well, that ain't no normal course. How many times you call WERE to complain about politically damn talk radio?
I think I called them twice,
All right. So how is that a normal course?
because in the past 6 years, I have had complaints of this nature with other radio stations in 4 states. And so there's a certain course of business
Complaints of what nature?
that people were making racist comments, ethnic comments, anti-Semitic comments, any nature of things, and I would call.
So if someone was complaining about black people, or some show had something about black people, they would call the Anti-Defamation League to do something about it.
Some
Objection.
people would.
Okay. And you personally received calls where, for example, Trevisano made a racist joke recently, and you got calls at the Anti-Defamation League saying, Betty, I want you to do something about Trevisano talking about black people. Did you?
I did not get a call about that.
How many calls have you ever received complaining about black jokes on the radio or TV?
I have no recollection.
I'm sorry.
I have no recollection.
Fact is, you never got any, did you?
That's your character.
I'm asking you, do you recall ever receiving any complaints about black jokes on radio or TV in your office, you personally, Betty Super?
Yes.
All right. And when did that occur?
Objection.
You don't remember?
You may answer. Go ahead and answer.
When did
Sorry.
that occur?
I I do not recall, sometime within the last 3 or 4 years.
And what did you do about it?
I called the radio station and worked with the woman who asked me to help her out.
What woman was that?
A woman in West Virginia,
What radio station was that?
somewhere in Charleston, West Virginia.
And it was a woman at the radio station, it was a program director or something that you talked to?
No, somebody in the community called.
I see. That was the woman.
Correct.
And that complaint you had a record of, didn't you?
Probably not.
Because, well, you had to work with her, you talked to her more than once.
That doesn't mean I have a record of it.
Did you write her phone number down?
I could.
Okay. Because when she called to complain about black jokes in West Virginia, you had to get back to her, let her know what happened after you talked to those people that had black joke complaints in West Virginia, right?
Perhaps.
Was it only black jokes or black and Jewish jokes?
I believe in that instance it was racist jokes, just black jokes.
Just black.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Now, do you know what a delay is with regard to a radio program?
I believe that's when what is said on the radio is several seconds delayed from being put on the air.
Okay, so you know how at least some type of radio stations work with regard to a delay button, right?
Vaguely.
Okay. Well, ma'am, in the conversation that you had, or any conversation that you had with Mr. Bevins, did you discuss the termination of the broadcast of Politically Damn Talk Radio?
I don't recall the specifics of any of those conversations.
I see. So now, if Mr. Bevins said that you, Betty Suffer, asked if I would call her back, referring to Bevins, would Bevins call you back if we decided to terminate the show? That wouldn't be true either, would it?
It's Mr. Bevins' memo, not mine. I don't recall the conversation.
Lisa, listen to the question carefully and do the best you can to answer the question that he specifically asked.
Okay.
If Mr. Bivens put in his memo of July 26, 2004, and I quote, she, referring to you, asked if I would call her back if we decide to terminate the show, would that be true?
Objection.
Would his words be true?
Yes.
Or his recollection of the conversation?
Would that be true? Did you ask him
I
to
don't-
call him back if WERE decided to terminate the show?
I don't recall the specifics of our conversation.
Did you talk about terminating the show with Mr. Bivens?
I don't recall the conversation, the specifics of the conversation.
I didn't ask about specifics. I said general. You called him, didn't you?
Correct.
It had to do with callers to the Anti-Defamation League, wasn't it?
Yes.
Had to do with Jewish interest, wasn't it?
It had to do with callers who called in to complain about the show.
Calling to the Anti-Defamation League,
Correct.
which is to stop defamation of Jews, correct?
And to protect and to ensure
I asked
fair
one
treatment.
question. You
And
can
I'm
answer
answering.
it.
Objection.
I said
You've
allow
gone
her
over
to
this
finish her
3
answer.
times.
You got to respond to my question.
Not
I am
until the
responding.
objections are expressed for the record. Mr. Lavey,
That's
you
your
go
objection.
first.
Go back.
Allow her to finish the answer to the question. Please don't cut her off.
That's not the question that I asked her. And I
She
know
did.
what you wanted to say, Mr. Lobby, but I'm asking you, isn't it a fact that this organization has as its basic premise, one of its basic premise, to stop defamation of Jews?
Objection.
Yes or no?
Objection asked and answered several times.
Several, many times. Mike, we've been over this and many of the other subject areas you've been touching upon.
You're right,
Please move
and we're going
along.
to keep moving. I asked, then answer my question. Isn't that a fact?
That
That's
as
one
one
of
of
the
its
parts.
core missions is to protect Jewish people, yes.
I agree. There's nothing wrong with that. Thank you very much. Now, when you asked, or did you ask, Mr. Bevins about dumping the show?
Objection, ask
If
and
you
answer.
recall.
I don't-
Never asked that question before. I'm just now touching on it, sir. Now be accurate.
Mike, you've asked that question in different forms.
I did not, sir. I'm looking verbatim from the memo. Look at it yourself. Did you ask Mr. Bevins about, quote, dumping the show, unquote?
I don't recall the specifics of our conversation.
So you don't remember discussing that with him?
I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
Is that a yes or no?
It's an I don't recall the specifics of the conversation. She's used the same words at least 50 times this afternoon.
And most of these can be answered yes or no. I don't recall.
There's no law that says she has to answer yes or no when the answer is, I do not recall the specifics of the conversation. And as many times as you are unhappy with that answer, it's not going to change.
Most appreciated, sir. Good counsel always has control of his client.
Truth is
Did
what
you
it
ever,
is.
did you ever ask Mr. Bevins to call you back?
I don't recall the specifics of the conversation.
Did he ever call you back?
I spoke with him one other time, I believe, and
Is the
I don't.
answer yes?
I don't
He called
know.
you back?
I don't know whether I initiated the phone call or he.
Got it. Do you know whether or not there was a meeting between Bevins, Bush, Glover, Abe, and myself?
No.
Do you know whether or not a specific request was made to talk with you regarding the show? To them, to Radio 1 people?
I have to object to that. I don't understand.
Do you know whether or not a specific request to talk to you was made to the Radio 1 people? That is, did they tell you that?
Did who tell you that?
Anybody at Radio 1?
That somebody wanted to speak with him?
That Abe and I wanted to speak to you.
No, I have no.
But you do recall that at some time, I called you personally and talked to you about Politically Damn Talk Radio.
Yes.
Let's go out directly for a minute. I was looking for a memo and I haven't seen it. Let me just pull it up. you indicated that you had reviewed emails provided to you by your counsel that you had sent to Mr. Bivens and were part of his deposition. Is that correct?
Yes.
What did you read in the deposition that you reviewed of Mr. Bivens?
What did I read?
Yes, what did you read?
I read the part of the deposition where I was referred to.
What did you read that he said your conversations were about?
I don't believe that I read anything about that.
What did you read in that deposition about what he said mentioning your name?
He's talking about email.
Only emails?
And perhaps some conversations, but most of the emails, I believe.
So before you came here, you read exactly what Mr. Bivens had testified to under oath with regard to his phone calls with you.
Well, I recall reading about the emails, and I read the deposition. That's what I read.
I ask you, ma'am, you reviewed before you came to this deposition what Mr. Bivens said under oath about the content of his phone calls. Did you not?
I read the parts of the deposition that referred to me. I recall discussion of emails, and there may have been something about phone calls,
Okay.
and that's what I read.
And that's what I was asking you.
And that's what he said.
How long ago did you read what Mr. Bivens said about the content of his phone calls with you?
Well, as I said, I recall the part about the emails. There may have been something about the phone calls. I read it on Saturday evening, discussed it with my attorney yesterday afternoon.
Okay, that was Saturday, today being Tuesday. So 3 days ago, you read the transcript of what Mr. Bivens testified to under oath about the content of your conversations. Is that correct?
I recall the email and something about telephone conversations. That is correct.
All right. And from Saturday to the day, even looking at what Mr. Bivens said these conversations were about, your emails and whatever, you have no recollection of what these conversations were about.
Which conversation?
The conversations between you and Mr. Bivens regarding politically damned talk radio.
The telephone conversation?
Yeah. You have no
I have
recollection.
no recollection.
So reading what Mr. Bivens said the conversations were about didn't help refresh your recollection? Okay. Now, ma'am, showing you what has been marked as Exhibit 3 from this deposition, would you take a look at these documents, please?